The most powerful thing I did was learn to think for myself. As someone who grew up as a Christian in my whole life, Christian schools, Catholic school, my whole life in church, like just all of that, it as a child, it just never felt authentic. There were so many different things that I questioned. Like I said, my household was Christian. My mother's father was a minister, and my father was highly religious at the time, and it was just so heavy. And even at the Christian school I went to, like, we were, kind of forced to learn Bible verses. And if we didn't have a Bible verse, right, for class, you would get whooped with a white belt. You get, threatened to learn a Bible verse. And to me, as an adult, I don't feel like that is healthy. I don't feel like that is something that makes sense. Even in the household that I was brought up in, like, there were, different things that was said, kind of like threatening, in matters of religion. And it's just very interesting that I noticed that people don't realize just how condemning and toxic religion can be, as well as how people use religion to be like a threat or a cage, if that makes sense. So I never understood everything in the Bible. Like, I always was a kid that questioned things or had something to say. They called me a smart mouth, back talker. Like, I always had something to say. So, I was always getting hit. And with that being said, one thing that I feel as an adult, I remember I think I was like in my I would say either early 20s or late teens, where it really just, I wasn't connecting with it. Like, I felt forced to go to church. I would just go to church with my mom and my aunt, and I would just sit there and just wait for it to be over. And I just couldn't, it wasn't resonating with me. It wasn't aligned. I tried so hard. I tried to dive into the Bible. I had phases where all I would do is just like connect and read the Bible, watch different, religious programming on TV, and go to church, go be prayed for, when they ask if someone needs prayer. I did all of that. And I remember I was just searching because I thought I was evil. I thought it was bad that I wasn't resonating with everything that, my family believed in, and, everyone I knew believed in. Like, why is it that I'm questioning everything? Why is it that I felt so rebellious and like toxic, because it just didn't feel right. There were times where my mom would start going to church and I would just sit in the car. Like, I would literally go to church with her and sit in the car just so that I would, be around, when we would go to lunch. And that is just how it became, where people would start asking, like, why is Taylor in the car? And it's just because I didn't want to go in. It's because I didn't feel like it was authentic. When I went to church, it was for the choir. I love the songs. I love music. And that's just the way that I went about things. Like, for me, church was always like hit or miss, mostly miss for me. And I don't know, it just never felt authentic. Okay. With that being said, late teens, early 20s, I decided, it was a big deal. I decided, you know what? I'm going to step away from Christianity. And that kind of, I knew that shook my mom up, because she's just such a faith-driven woman, because of her upbringing. But she wasn't forceful. She was never forceful. My father was a little bit more forceful with his beliefs. And with that being said, I stepped away from Christianity. And once I did that, my connection with God became so much more stronger. The spiritual gifts that I had already had as a kid became stronger. And I started to understand things from a higher perspective and a higher understanding. With that being said, my dad has always had this on and off kind of I don't want to say on and off connection with God. I think he's always been connected to God, but he has had this on and off connection with religion. So I did experience a lot of like my father having these random different like epiphanies and different things he would be on. That would just be my dad, my experience with him. So with that being said, around this time I was more into learning about spirituality because I started getting visions of different, ascended masters and beings, and my father happened to be along the same kind of timeline of that energy as well. And with that being said, I started aligning with people who also were in that energy. And it just felt kind of like a collective consciousness shift of energy. Even though I'm not close to my father at all, that was something that I did notice, is that there are other people, including my own father, who were having these shifts and changes about religion. And it was such a deep thing because it showed me, like, one, you're not alone. Two, don't feel bad that, this programming didn't work, because the truth is it was programming. It was programming that I had coming into this life. You're a Christian. And when you've been programmed with something at a very young age, you feel like it's almost it's sinful that you think any other way. Like, how could you think any other way? So I'm so grateful that I had the balls and the confidence to be myself and to say, you know what, this isn't in alignment with me or who I am. And I don't like organized religion. And I had to come to that conclusion that, hey, it's okay for you to not like organized religion. I don't like being confined. I've never been a person who likes being told what to do. I like to feel liberated and free. And I have my own connection with God, source, universe, as well as with archangels, ancestors, spirit guides, and other beings. So, like I said, my connection with the spirit realm has always been there since I was a little girl. But my connection with God's source just flew. Like it popped off, jumped up, like electric lightning took off as soon as I got from under religion. And that is the deepest thing I can say, is that my bond with God, when people say, oh, so you don't believe in God? I believe in God. And I love Ascended Master Jesus. But I also know that teaching isn't the only teaching. And that teaching also has a lot of negative undertones to it. So with that being said, I'm open-minded and I believe in coexisting with all religions. But I believe in gaining wisdom and learning knowledge about these religions and how they were used to keep people in oppression, especially people of color. And with that being said, even all the way down to my childhood, being threatened to being threatened to read the Bible, being threatened to remember Bible verses just reminds me of slavery. And I don't feel like children should be beat or threatened due to spirituality or religion of any sort. And that's just my stand on it. So I personally don't believe in religion or anything organized for that matter. It's too cultish in my opinion. And I've seen a lot of cult-like behavior in matters of religion. Okay. I don't believe in following one specific person. I don't believe in going after information and guidance that's outside of you and just sticking to that and only thinking, in alignment with one person. I believe you need to believe in yourself. You need to connect with your own spirit guides. You need to connect with God's source and listen to your own intuition discernment. It's okay to receive support or inspiration or knowledge every now and then from others, but to completely follow them can be tricky. So do yourself a favor and learn who you are outside of your old programming and be free from religion. Seriously, it'll help. One, it's going to help you to believe in yourself and have confidence. Two, it's going to give you liberation and freedom. Three, it's going to help you to think out of the box and to think for yourself instead of thinking under the confinement of a religion or what other people believe you should be feeling or behaving, you know. So it gives you freedom and clarity to think for yourself. And that's so important. It's so important. Now, through your journey, if you find yourself, inspired to go back to a certain belief, system or practice, then at least you know that you did that authentically because you felt called to do so and not because you were programmed to do so. That is my point. Choose for yourself and do what's best for you. But at the same time, how would you know what you believe in if it was something that's always been programmed in you? If that battery pack was placed into you ever since you were newborn and you grew up with that same battery pack all the way up to being an adult, how would you know what you truly believe in if that was something that you were always programmed to believe in? That's my question. So I feel that a powerful person is someone who chooses a belief system or a practice out of their freedom, out of their own, call to do so, their own programming. So that's just my opinion. So follow your heart, listen to your intuition, and do what's best for you and not for anyone else. And like I said, you have your own connection with God's source energy. And there's always something to learn from these different belief systems. And I'm hearing mythologies, all of that. But at the same time, if it's causing oppression to a certain gender, a certain race, a certain culture, it might be something you want to rethink and something you want to reconsider.